Hello everyone and welcome to part 4, divs and spans. So in this lecture we're going to be showing you some examples of how to use a div and a span tag. However, keep in mind that we actually won't really be able to utilize them until we learn about CSS. Basically we're going to be using div and span tags to actually group together blocks of HTML. And the reason we want to group them together usually is to apply CSS to them. So keep that in mind as we learn about them. In this lecture, they probably won't seem to take any effect into account, but later on we will see how they are useful when adding in style of CSS. Let's jump to the Atom Text Editor just to show you how they work. Okay, so here I am at the Atom Text Editor. I also have my browser open. I'm a little zoomed in here so we can see the text clearly. Right now I just have a heading 1 here. Let me go ahead and show you what it would look like if we were to use a div tag. And div basically stands for a division. And it allows you to tag together groups of elements into basically generic containers. So for instance, let's say I have another heading 1, and this is something that says, we'll call it group 1, and then I have a paragraph here that says, I want to be together in group 1. So let me save that, refresh this, and we see we have divs and spans, group 1, and then the paragraph says, I want to be together in group 1. Later on, when we learn about CSS, what we want to do is add styles to particular elements in our HTML. And one way we can do that is by actually saying, okay, apply style number 1, so for instance, the color red, to all heading 1 tags. So that would just go along and say, hey, is this a heading 1 tag? Okay, this font color is now red. Is this a heading 1 tag? Okay, this font color is now red. But sometimes you actually don't want to do it by the actual element type. You want to do it by a specific division or a group of elements that you define. And the way you can do that, as we'll see later on in the CSS section, is by actually calling a div tag. And so the way it would work is you can see here I have div, and if I hit enter, notice that we automatically get this class to pop out here. And that's going to allow us to essentially name this division after a class, and then we can apply styles to that class. And we can put whatever we want in that class. So for instance, I can now put this all here, give this class a name such as something like group 1, save this, and if I refresh this, we won't notice anything different here in the HTML. Later on, when we learn about CSS, we'll learn how to actually add style to a division with a class name instead of just actual element tags. And that's basically what we're going to be using a division for. So right now, this div tag by itself in HTML doesn't mean a whole lot. It's going to mean a lot more when we learn about CSS. So if this was a little unclear to you, especially with that class keyword, don't worry about it too much. It's going to make a lot more sense in the future. I just want to introduce it now because it really is just HTML. It's not CSS. It's used in combination with CSS. Okay, and then the last thing I want to mention here is the span tag. And basically the span tag is almost the exact same thing as a division, except it's inline instead of grabbing an entire container. So let's say we have this class, or this division of group 1. If I wanted to make essentially a little inline container to only apply effects to an inline section, so only apply effects, for instance, to these 3 letters, or 3 words here, be together and in, what I could do is wrap them in a span tag, and then put whatever I want there to be in that span. And again, I'm going to save this and refresh this here. We don't notice any difference because we haven't actually applied any style to it. But just keep these 2 keywords in mind for tagging when we later learn about CSS. Okay, so again, not a whole lot to actually show here. Basics of this lecture is just to be aware of that there's a div tag and a span tag. If their usefulness doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you right now, don't worry about it. It will make a lot more sense when we actually read or reach the CSS section of the course. Okay, thanks everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture.